Hola damas and caballeros, today we're gonna talk about JavaScript, the language of the logic in any web application. Any web page that you may seen or you've built by yourself is usually based on the three basic features. It's the CSS, HTML, and sometimes JavaScript. The HTML is the skeleton of any web application. You used the HTML to place the different divs, defines where the element should be on the page. You use CSS to change the color of each of these elements or any other CSS properties, actually to stylize or change the design of the elements. And when it comes to adding an additional logic, for example, you have a button and you want some action happened when you click on this button, you need to use the JavaScript. Of course, your web application might not require the JavaScript. You can deal without the JavaScript. But if we are talking about adding some logic to make site a little bit live, it usually you can implement such features by using the JavaScript. Okay, in this particular lesson, I'm gonna show you a quick example what JavaScript can give you. We are not gonna talk about very basics of the JavaScript. We're gonna talk about very basics of the JavaScript in the next lesson. And today I'm just gonna show you some tricks and the features that you can do by using the JavaScript. Also, I need to mention that this course may be quite tricky for those of you who are not completely familiar with the CSS or HTML. So this course requires at least a minimum knowledge of the CSS and HTML. So it will be clear for you what the CSS selectors, what IDs are, what classes are, and how to handle with the HTML languages. So this is our HTML page. We would like to create the site with some logic. Let's imagine for a second that we have our index.html file, we have image.jpg file, and let me write down the HTML code which will place the image on our web page, which will be this cute cat up there, and below the image we'll have the button which called click, or for example add like. And let's check this out, how it looks like right now. So if we take a look, okay, this is up. Let's add some break lines, so make sure that the button will be on the image. So what we have up there, we have add like button under the image, this cat image. Let's also, instead of this beer, actually let's put the paragraph where the paragraph will means the amount of the likes. So this is what we have, the image with the cat, the amount of the likes, which is 0 actually right now, and the button add like. So this was created by the simple HTML. I didn't use any JavaScript, I didn't use any CSS, so this is the plain site. What I would like to do right now, I would like to add some logic. So wherever I click this add like button, the amount of the likes will increase. So if I click add like once, the amount of the likes will be 1. If I click the next time, it will increase to 2, and so on. And this is the problem or the logic which can be implemented by the JavaScript. This is actually when the JavaScript comes to our help, and let me show you how to achieve that. So first of all, if you come to add in some logic, if this is the problem that you're gonna solve via the JavaScript, and actually this problem only can be solved by the JavaScript mostly. So this is what we need to do. We need to add the script file. As you probably added the CSS file with the extension .css, we also need to add a JavaScript file. It actually doesn't really matter how you're gonna call it. In my particular case, I'm gonna call it script.js. So it's script.js. I've created this file called script.js, and now I need to connect the script.js with my index file. Let me actually do it like this so we can see both the index file and the script file on separated windows. So we have the script file, we have the HTML file, and we need to connect them. To connect these two files, actually connect script.js file into implement the script.js file into the index.html, we need to use the tag called script with the attribute src, where you specify the name of the file. if this file is located in the same folder where your index file are. So since our script.js file is the same where the index.html, we just specify the name. You see the attribute up there is the same as the attribute when you specify the image. And here actually comes, I mean, like this script.js file is the place where we're gonna write down the logic for making this like site alive. So the amount of the likes will increase every time we click the button. So let's go a little bit over the plan, what we're gonna do, or over the idea of what we're gonna do. So what we want to do, we want to take this button, and every time we click on this button, this amount of the likes will be increased. First of all, we want to make some action when we click the button. That actually means on the level of the JavaScript is that you want to create the function every time you click the button. You want to execute the function every time you click the button. So if you want on click of the button to do some actions, you need to write down, well, first of all, you need to create this action in the JavaScript. And every time you want to create an action in the JavaScript, you use the magic word function. Then you think about the name of the function, which will be, you know, responsible for your action. Usually I recommend to name the functions the same way, which will describe what this function is responsible for. If we want this function to add likes, so, well, it's logical to add it, to name it something like add like. Also, don't forget, after you write down the name of the function, these empty square brackets. And also we're gonna need these additional square brackets. Let's leave it empty right now, for now. And now we need to connect this function, this action of ours, add like, to this button. And to do so, we need to write down the attribute that's called click or on click, and then write down the name of the function. So this is, I mean, like by writing this, we just connected on click. We just make sure that every time button was clicked, the function add like will be executed. And before we're gonna write down the main logic, let's first of all check if that function even works. So let's say thing that you can do is you can load or show the notification on top of the page, and to do so you need to write down the command called alert. This is how it's written down, the command called alert, and here inside this command you can write down the message that you want to see. So you can, and if it's some kind of the string message, you need to write it down in double quotes or single quotes. And here, for example, let's say hello bro. So once again, what's gonna happen when we click right now on the button? It will show us notification with such message. Let's check this out. So we click add like, and this hello bro notification appears. We click OK, and if we press it again, this action will be called again. So that means that we successfully connected this button with our function. I mean, since we see the notification, that means it works. Okay, so we know that the function is connected successfully. But now let's say that instead of the static message of this hello bro, we would like to see actual, before actually placing them, before we make sure that this amount of the likes will change. Let's say that we're gonna put these like messages, actually like count, we're gonna put in this notification bar. So first of all, wherever you're gonna work with the data, and if we're talking about the amount of the likes, this is some kind of the variable or the entity that's gonna change. And that means that this information supposed to be stored somewhere. So if you have something, some data that you're gonna work with, most likely you're gonna store it somewhere. And to store any data, I mean, like to store the data in the JavaScript, you need to use the variables. To declare the variables or to create the variables, you need to use a magic word let. In the JavaScript, there is also two other words that you may be facing. It's the var and the const. I will explain the difference in them a little bit later, but for now let's assume that we're gonna use, for every new variable, we're gonna use the magic word let, which, and Also, as it was with the functions, when you create a variable via let, you also need to think about the name of this variable. It's logical to name the variable after the data that you're gonna store up there. So since you want to store the information about the likes, it's it's logically okay to name it like likes. And make it equal to the 0, because by default the amount of the likes is equal to 0. That's also quite clear, I suppose. Okay, so we have this variable. This is the variable, or the storage if you want, where we're gonna store the information about like counter. And every time we kind of click the button, we would like to increase this counter to +1 and also show this information. First of all, let me show you how to show this information. Like when you click an alert, which will be, instead of this string message, you put likes, and that automatically means now every time you press add like, you will see the value from the likes. The value from the likes, which is 0. But right now it doesn't change, because I just show what was already up there. So since I want to increase this, like every time I click add like, and I also, before the showing it, I would like to increase the counter to +1, I need to actually, write it down to describe inside the functions that before the showing, you need to increase the previous value to +1. To increase the value of the variable to +1, you can use the following syntaxes. Likes ++. That means that it will increase the previous value, which by default is the 0, then it will be 1, then 2, 3, 4, and so on. So this likes ++ will increase to +1. Let me actually show you how it works by skipping unnecessary explanation. So press add like, it's 1. Press add like 2, it's 2. Press add like 3, it's 3, and it will go on and go on, and it will remember the amount of the likes. But if we reload the page, of course the counter will be start from the 1 again, actually from the 0, but +1 when we first click. But main logic is fine. It works. What is the next step that we're gonna need to achieve up there? We're gonna make sure that we see this amount of the likes not in the bar up there, but we will see it up there. So we need to change, we want to change this value instead of showing it in the top bar. So we need to take the value from up there and put it up there. It's not actually by the mistake on some random situation I put the span up there. So whatever the JavaScript can manipulate the CSS, can manipulate the HTML, and it can change the content of the page dynamically. This is one of the features of the JavaScript. And this is our situation is the situation when we want to change something on the page. So we have a place which we want to change dynamically from the JavaScript. We want to get rid of the 0 and put the actual amount of the likes, which will change in a real time. So wherever you decide that you want to change something in HTML, you need to mark this place. One of the way how to mark this place is through ID. So you put the attribute ID, then you think about some name, let's say like. It doesn't really matter how you're gonna name it. And this is the part where we end up with the HTML up there. So we mark the place that we want to change. Now we go back to our JS code. So here we first of all, let's comment this line, so make it inactive. We don't want to see any top bar anymore, so let's comment it. It's done like this in the JavaScript. And now we need to take this place, we need to capture this place and then change its content. When I say capture, we need to somehow explain the JavaScript that we need this place. We need this particular place marked as ID. To do so, we also, since we want to capture this place and we want to store it somewhere, we also gonna create another variable, which I'm gonna call span. Just to make sure that it will be clear that I'm stored inside the variable span, the span. And to capture the element from the HTML inside the JavaScript, I'm gonna call the global element called document, then I put dot, and execute the method that called getElementById. There is actually several, as you can see, methods that allow us to manipulate the HTML, but in this particular case we're going to use getElementById. And here in the semicolons, so double columns, you specify the ID, which in our case will be like, because it's like up there the same as up there. It's important to, you know, to be the same up there. So after we capture, this is actually the place where we capture the span, we can change it. And we actually need to change some specific property of the span inside inner HTML, it's called. I mean, like, we want to change the inside context or inside text of this span. To do so, one of the way to do so is to by clicking the dot and changing inner HTML and make it equal to something that we would like to see. So if you change it to some specific text, it's gonna be actual text. But since we don't want just some random text, we want something that we change dynamically. In our case, it's likes. We make it equal to the likes. So in this particular case, inside HTML, which by default was 0, will be changed to the likes, to what's stored up there. And let's take a look at the results. So we press add like. It changed to 1, which what up there. Then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's go on and go on and go on. It's gonna remember the last value and then, you know, put it. It's actually every time when we click on add like, it's clear the previous value and put a new one. Keep in mind that if I reload the page, we lose all the progress, but that's okay. This course is like for the front end web developers. We work in the situation of the one session, so we are not covering the situation when you need to keep the data even after the reloading, but still there is ways to do so. I'm gonna explain it later, but for now, let's assume that we work in the situation like before the reloading. I mean, like, whatever happens before the reloading. I mean, like, if you reload the page, we lose all the progress, and we just need to make sure that it works in the case of one session, so-called. One other thing that I would like to, explain is about this likes ++, which I said is increasing to +1. Another way to do so here in the JavaScript, it's to make it like this: likes equal to likes +1. It's actually doing almost the same. For you, it means that it's do always the same. There is a little difference on a very deep level, but we are not gonna go into this, that specific details. So the basic idea that this increased to +1 and this increased to the +1. And I recommend to use this syntax. But this syntax works only when you need to increase to +1. But if, for example, you increase to 2, then it's better to use this syntax. Of course, in your particular case, it's gonna be not +1, but +2 or +3. It depends on how much you're gonna increase. So if you want to increase to the 10, you write down like this. So once again, this way works only for increasing to +1. If we're talking about some different value, then it's better to use this syntax. It also works for the decreasing. So keep it in mind. Okay, let's keep it like this, and this is basically it. This is the basic example where we connect the script file, added some logic, make sure that this logic will be executed on the button, and the result will be inserted in the HTML. So this is the basic example what the JavaScript can give you, what the features you can implement into your site, I mean, like, how you can implement the logic. On the next lesson, we're gonna go over the very basics of the JavaScript. We get familiar with the so-called variable and the basic primitives of the JavaScript.